Welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm Sarah Stock. I'm your host, and I am so pleased that you are here. Wherever you are listening around the world or watching, we are just so grateful. We have conversations every single week with somebody who is in an industry where they are a leader, where they are impacting the lives of other people, and that they are also willing to share part of their story. I am so excited to introduce in just a moment to you. But before we do the introduction, we want to say thank you to Glass Arts Collective for their continued and faithful support of what we are doing here at Simply Sarah. And so she is known as the Tennessee ukulele lady. She's also known as the Appalachian. I have her say that for you because it's such an incredible word that she's put together from Appalachia and African background. Georgia Line Peach. I'm so excited to bring into studio today the very own Kelle Jolly, who has won incredible awards, the Martin Luther King Jr. Arts Award. We are just so amazed and grateful and thankful that you carved out time out of your schedule and impacting the lives of other storytellers to be with us here today. Thank you, friend.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Kelle, how did you become an ukulele player? What was that journey for you into the arts?
I've always been a musician. I started in middle school on trumpet. And then in high school, I moved from trumpet to French horn. I went to college at South Carolina State University to study music as a French horn player. And then I also sang in the choir. I sang in the jazz band. I played in the symphonic band. And I also had my own band when I was in college. And then after college, I continued to sing, and mostly singing with R&B and jazz bands. And I tried to pick up guitar because piano just was challenging for me in a way that really, piano was challenging for me. And I wanted to play something that I could carry with me. And so I started taking guitar lessons. But I didn't feel like a natural guitar player. And one day I was walking down the street in Knoxville, and I stopped in Morlock's Music. And on the shelf, there was a green soprano ukulele with a dolphin on the bridge. And I decided to buy it. It was about $30. The price tag said $30. I took it to the cash register, and I don't know if Matt even charged me for it. He probably just told me to take it. I can't remember. And that was my first ukulele. And once I bought a ukulele, about 10 of my friends all bought ukuleles, and then I had to teach them because they said, "Well, Kelle, you're the teacher.
Right.
No, you teach us." And that's how I ended up starting Ukisphere. We started meeting first at the Time Warp Tea Room for ukulele jams, and then other people would come, and then we had to start meeting in other places later. So that's how I started playing ukulele. It all began with a little shiny green ukulele with a dolphin on the bridge.
That's such an amazing story. Do you still have your first ukulele?
Yes.
I love that. And for people who think that ukuleles are Hawaiian, true. They do play them in Hawaii. They're actually from Portugal. And it was the people in Portugal who were seafaring people who took them to Hawaii as we connect in so closely with them with Hawaiian music. You have, when I first saw you performing, it was a Martin Luther King Jr. concert here in Knoxville. And the symphony was playing. There were different people who came and spoke. It was such a moving experience. And to have you on stage as the Tennessee ukulele lady, sharing in that concert was just this beautiful, sparkly experience for me. How did you get to the place that you are now playing on such large stages, not just teaching other people to play ukulele, but also then being on these beautiful, huge stages?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what convinces people to invite me to be a part of shows. I think that I've been doing this a long time. And once you've been on enough flyers and performed enough places, people just get used to seeing your name. And they feel like other people will recognize your name. And so you get invited to do things. Now, why? I don't know. I can't assume why people invite me to be a part of things. But I just all I can figure out is that they recognize my name and they know that I'm not Kelle Jolly, the basketball player.
Good point. Good point. I think also, Kelle, there's an energy that you bring to the stage, and I see it also in your Instagram posts when you will do little videos of different things that you're working on or places that you're getting prepared to perform. There is this exuberance that just embraces yes, that embraces life. And I think that you have said yes to things so many times that then has gotten your name out there as well. But there's a part about the energy of who you are. And when you were on stage, bringing that beautiful laughter that you just shared with us, bringing that onto stage, and that helps people to go, oh, if she is experiencing this joie de vivre, maybe I can as well. Maybe if I just listen a little bit more to what she's singing or saying or playing, maybe some of that energy will vibrate over to me, and maybe I will feel a little bit of that as well.
Well, it could be if that's your experience, then that's your truth. If you see it like that. I would hope that people feel some kind of feel the authenticity of my performances and also the joy of performing or being creative. I think that everyone has that place inside of them that they can find and bring it out.
Kelle, I so concur with what you are saying. I'm going to share just a little bit of a backstory that I was born and raised in Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and some of my absolute earliest memories were dancing to the African drums. And just being in the village, and my parents working on clean water projects and setting up education. And but as a child, I was just there doing my thing, right? Being a kid. At this particular concert, almost a year ago, was the first time that I felt my heart swell like it did dancing with the African drums, that space. And I was just sitting in the seat, right? I'm just a participant. I'm just a participant by listening. I'm clapping at the right places. I know that when the conductor holds his hands up, that between movements, I'm not supposed to be, clapping. I'm doing my thing, right? Like I'm supposed to be doing. And yet for me, the experience was just so enriching and visceral. And I hadn't thought about all the different times that I, as a musician, had also performed and had done it, but yet it hadn't had that heart-opening experience for me. So I'm saying to the audience around the world, if you get a chance to listen to anything that Kelle Jolly is doing, follow her on Instagram, get to a performance that she's doing in person. It's absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it.
Thank you.
I would love for you to share a little bit about how you created this beautiful compound word, the Appalachian Georgia line peach. How did you come to this beautiful space of doing that?
whenever you have an opportunity to perform or speak, you have to introduce yourself. And you want to introduce yourself in a way where people can relate to you. And I think it's just the Southern in me is that I know you don't know my parents, you don't know my family, but I want to let you know who I am in a way that is relatable. Um, and so I was born in South Carolina in the Low Country. I grew up in Decatur, Georgia, and Metro Atlanta, and I've lived in East Tennessee for 20 years, and East Tennessee, Appalachia for 20 years. And so I just thought about like all the places I've lived and who I am. And I just decided to call myself an Appalachian Georgia Lina peach. Now, Georgia Lina peach, that's kind of explanatory. I mean, that's a name that or nickname that a lot of people use. Even James Brown did, because when you live in South Carolina and you have part of your life in Georgia, then they call you a Georgia Lina peach. And a lot of people, especially a lot of people in Atlanta, are from South Carolina, so that's a common thing, a Georgia Lina peach. Yeah, even James Brown.
Yes.
So, but Appalachian is a term that was coined by Frank X. Walker, and Appalachian is a combination of African American and Appalachian, and it's a term that he coined. And a lot of people have used it. I just feel like it rolls off the tongue. It says something more than just Appalachian. A lot of times throughout history, the identity of Appalachian has not been adopted by most Black people. And so Appalachian to me is that claiming of home and identity. And so Appalachian Georgia Lina peach is representative of where I've been and who I am.
Yes. And it does roll off the tongue. And I so appreciate you sharing with me, because I've been coming back to East Tennessee. We're living on the property that was my grandparents' property. So I've been back here when we come back to the States. Every time we would come, we were here. And then when we were in college, this was a place to come as well. And but I didn't realize the Georgia Lina being Georgia and Carolina. And you're absolutely right. There is so much movement back and forth in that space. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us this morning. In the place of storytelling, how did you become the magnificent storyteller that you are today? How did that happen?
I grew up in a household where reading was encouraged, stories were performed, and music was running through all of that.
Yes.
My parents are, I like to say, very country. You know, my mom's from the Low Country, my dad's from the Upstate, and they sang folk songs. My dad played a mouth harp. My mom sings. My mom sings around the house. Even today, she is always humming or singing a song to herself. And we grew up with our parents singing songs, singing folk songs, and telling stories. My dad always sang "Sweet Kentucky Baby" to me. That was my lullaby. That was my favorite song that he sang to me. And my mom always read to us lots of stories, and they performed the stories. When I say perform the stories, I mean they became the characters. They acted out the stories. They acted out the characters in songs, and they modeled that performance for me even at home. They weren't stage performers, solo performers, definitely not. But at home, as part of your interaction in the house, stories and songs were included. And so that is just a habit of mine. It's something that I grew up with, and something that I've taken to the stage with me. As a musician, we're always telling stories because songs tell a story. And then there's a story behind why the composer wrote the song or the arranger arranged the song. There's a story that musicians bring for finding the song and knowing the song. And then the audience brings the story as they listen. So I look at music performance as a jewel, with different cuts and sides, and everyone that's involved in the experience of music has a story. And so I just feel like it's natural. Storytelling is natural for musicians. Storytelling is natural for stage performers, because you got to tell the audience something to draw them in, to connect. Again, to connect. That's what our communication does. Our communication draws lines. It creates connections. It reaches out and pulls people closer to us. Just reflecting on what you said, I had no idea of your background when I was singing on stage. I'm looking out at the audience, at hundreds of people. I don't know what they're thinking while they're listening to me, but I have a story and they have a story, and somehow we've come to this time and moment together, and our stories intertwine. So studying storytelling on the graduate level for me was just a natural progression and something that I felt would enhance what I do on stage naturally. And naturally, as a storyteller, I feel like I did pretty well. But now, having that background in communications and storytelling studies, because it's not just the performance part, it's the history of knowing how stories have functioned in human behavior, history of humans. Stories are as old as human life, and whether stories were told orally or visually or through symbols, we have been telling stories, and we continue to tell stories. And that degree really has opened my eyes to the possibility of what my music can be, and what it can do.
Yeah, that is so good. We're going to take a quick break. We will be right back. And as we are taking this quick commercial break, I just want to also thank all of the artists who are out there, the artists who have made this program possible, the artists who are continuing to hone their skill. Keep at it. It is absolutely worth doing. Glass Arts Collective is doing something so fun and amazing. Believing that all of us are creative, they are opening up their Instagram page for people who are creating things to be able to post those things there. I also believe that you are creative, and I'm super excited about this opportunity to be supporting Glass Arts Collective. They are amazing. So glad that you are here for this conversation, whether you were watching on E36 TV or you were watching on YouTube later on, or you are listening as a podcast. We are so grateful for you being here and our growing audience around the world. You are in America, you're in Canada, you're in Europe, you're also in Australia, and now also in South Africa. It's so exciting that this conversation that we are having is literally being shared with people all around the world. Kelle, I had the opportunity to also interview Charles Maynard, who is someone who's also a storyteller from this particular area. And so many of his stories talk about the history of the hills, the history of the Cherokee who have been here and thankfully still are, the history of the people who came in just trying to eke out a life. And the depth of the ancientness of the Appalachian Hills is something truly remarkable to me. We were recently up in southern Kentucky working at a place that has changed so many people's lives, the Henderson Settlement. And again, just noticing how education came into a place where people were completely illiterate. And one person came in and said, I have this on my heart. I want to do this. I want to teach the children how to read. And the first person that he came to and shared this with said, I'm going to give you land in order for you to be able to build that school. And the difference that it's made for that community, having somebody come in, yes, and bring education, but also then be able to start writing the stories down, to be able to capture those stories in some ways. I know that you've been doing some fundraising to be able to help the next generation of storytellers. Can you share a little bit about why that's on your heart and what that is looking like, what's happening there?
Okay, a couple of years ago, I saw an announcement for a grant opportunity. The grant was being offered by the National Association of Black Storytellers and South Arts. They were looking for cultural bearers in Appalachia from Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky. Did I say Kentucky? Okay.
Yes.
And they were looking for storytellers who were keeping the tradition. And so when that announcement came out, I thought to myself, well, I'm in graduate school. I'm a storyteller. I'm in graduate school. I've been storytelling for, at least a decade, like on an official level. And then I thought, well, who else could it be? I know Sparky Rucker. I know Linda Paris Bailey is a storyteller through theater. Like, who else would be applying? And it made me aware of the fact that I don't really know many Black storytellers in East Tennessee, Appalachia that are performing like the circuit, like
right.
Commonly known. I know there are storytellers out there, but they might not be organized in a way that is connected to any of the networks that I know. So I'm not assuming that people aren't storytelling. I would just say that you're connected to, as a performer, you're connected to certain networks, and you're aware of those people in those networks.
Right.
And inside that network, I wasn't familiar with a lot of people. So I was wondering, like, who would apply? So when I applied for the grant of the fellowship, in my application, I told the people who were judging the applications that this is an opportunity to bring people together. Like, your grant opportunity has brought to my attention that we are not connected in storytelling in this region like people are in urban areas like in Atlanta or in Baltimore or in New York or any of those places. We don't have a storytelling representation of Black people in East Tennessee, Appalachia. And so in my application, I said, even if you don't give me the fellowship, I am going to follow through with this work, because now I know I need to do this. Like, I feel like it's important. It's something that I have also done in the jazz community for women. So I felt like, okay, this is another gap. This is another hole that needs to be filled. This is another awareness that needs to grow. And so even though I did not receive the fellowship the first year, I started looking for storytellers and producing Black Appalachian storytelling concerts in East Tennessee. So I had one that the first one was held at Knoxville College, which it was important to be a part of that story, for that to be a part of the presentation because of
Yes.
Knoxville College being so central to Black culture in East Tennessee. And so we held the first concert there, and Sparky and Rhonda Rucker, they were performing there.
Beautiful.
Sparky was the one that received the fellowship the first year. So Sparky was there. Linda Paris Bailey told of her most current work. My niece, Magda Johnson, she was maybe 12 at the time, and she's a storyteller. And I performed. And we also had Obayana Ajanaku on drums. And so that first concert was modeled after the rituals and customs of National Association of Black Storytellers concerts and events. And we had a great time, and it was brought to people's attention that, hey, we should be organizing around storytelling. And one of my friends that volunteered, she's also a singer, she remarked to me afterwards, she said, Kelly, I think I'm a storyteller. Because after seeing it and experiencing it, she realized, like, that's in me too. I need to pursue this. And so ever since then, I've been organizing more Black Appalachian Storytellers concerts. I've had more. I've had one at Oak Ridge with more tellers, people like Black Atticus, Joe Woods, who's the poet laureate of Knoxville, and Felicia and Dynamic Ray, Felicia Utsi and Dynamic Ray. Sister Afia, Ubanibi Afia from Johnson City, Ronnie Pepper from Hendersonville in North Carolina. So all these people have been a part of the concerts, and I continue to have them. And I've just produced one in Kentucky. So other states, people, other storytellers in other states, presenters in other states have inquired about also holding these Black Appalachian storytelling concerts. And so along with Allie Blair and of Rebel in Berea, Kentucky, we just held a concert in Kentucky, our first Black Appalachian storytellers concert in Kentucky, and with Emily Jones and Jim Embry and Reverend Baskin and Aristotle Jones from West Virginia. So we just brought in other storytellers that have received the fellowship along with regional tellers, and we're continuing to organize and to be in fellowship with each other and to build relationships with each other. Because I think that's like the biggest thing, is that, yes, it's nice to have an audience. We want you to show up. We want you to experience the storytellers. But underlying all that, I want us to know each other. Appalachia is a place that physically, geographically can be isolating.
Yes.
Can be isolating. And most of the cities in Appalachia have smaller populations. And if you look at the overall population, people of African descent in many of these places make up less than 10%. That means that maybe 1 out of 10 people in that city are of African descent, and a lot of places are 3% or 5%. And so when the numbers are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, less probability that you're going to find someone who does what you do. Less probability that you're going to find someone who's a full-time creative person, musician, storyteller. And so we have to know each other across the region. We have to know each other across city lines and state lines to be in community with each other. We have to travel. Aristotle came from Osage, West Virginia, to Berea to be in the concert. You know, people come across mountains to be in community with each other, even if it's just 5 of us meeting. We have to travel to be in community with each other. It's not like being in a big metropolis where people are just traveling from one side of town to the next, and there are
Right.
20 people there or 30 people there. We have to travel over mountains to be in community with just 3 or 5 of us, and it's worth it.
Yes, it is worth it. It is, because the spark that one person gets just out of that conversation, the being seen by somebody else who is also a creative, encourages the person who is still working the day job, but their heart is completely in the storytelling, in the arts, in painting and building and poetry, in words, whatever it happens to be. Speaking about the mountains, because there are very, very few sections of the road in this part of the world that are straight. There's a lot of curving, following the mountains, going up over, finding passes to go through. A few months ago, Helene came through and brought with it a tremendous amount of rain. And so the space between Knoxville and Asheville, the 40 is not open and won't be for a while. How has that impacted the community of storytellers, the being able to get together? How are people doing with this? The river has literally, in some places, rerouted itself. And so I'm feeling that people are also in some ways rerouting their own worlds with that. So what have you heard in the storytelling community?
What have I heard? Okay. Well, storytellers are still moving, and storytellers are still finding ways to reach people and audiences.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, I participated in a concert in Jonesborough, Tennessee. I'm a member of the Jonesborough Storytellers Guild, and we produced a celebration concert in November. Celebration is a worldwide celebration of storytelling that was created by the National Storytelling Network, well, supported by the National Storytelling Network. And during those celebration concerts, storytellers come together and present shows. And we had a show that included storytellers from North Carolina and from the Tri-Cities in Tennessee. Wow. And at first, we didn't know if the concert was going to continue.
Right.
We didn't know if we were going to be able to have it, because some of the storytellers had been impacted by the hurricane.
Yeah.
And some of them had been displaced and not at home, and not having access to their own things, or they had been impacted in a way where they did not have the time and the capacity to perform, because they were dealing with family issues and the things that come along with your house being flooded, repairs and recovery. And so we didn't know for a while if we were going to be able to continue the concert. We had to wait till more recovery had been done and the roads had been cleared. So for us, it was really exciting to see I-26 open back up.
Yes.
Because before that, it was travel from North Carolina, Western North Carolina to East Tennessee had become a 3-hour trip. A 1-hour trip had become a 3-hour trip, or a 4-hour trip if you're going further, And so we were really happy to see that I-26 was cleared up. Now, as far as I-40, like you said, that's going to be a couple of years, but there are other routes to take. But the initial impact for me in my life was felt at the beginning of the recovery, which right after the hurricane. I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, when the storm came through. My husband, Will Boyd, was in Asheville. I went to Raleigh to be on a panel for a Black string symposium that was held during the International Bluegrass Music Association in Raleigh. And so I was in Raleigh speaking on panels and attending other events, and the storm came through. But for us in Raleigh, we barely had any rain. might have rained once, and we had some wind. And I remember being on the phone with my mom and my husband at the same time, because they both were experiencing the heavy winds, the winds that were blowing things into the houses, and the storms coming through at the same time. So I was on the phone with them. And then the next day, nothing. The next day, no phone calls could go through. No internet for them. And so I didn't know what happened to them. I didn't know. All I know is that the storm came through, and I thought, well, usually flooding doesn't affect where my mom is. So I was like, okay, I don't think it was flooding. It's probably winds. She doesn't have trees around her. I don't think that anything affected her house, but the storm came through and I can't get in touch with Will. And so I continued to attend things at the conference. And then when it was time for me to leave, I got in my car, started heading back to Asheville, and all the signs said, you will be turned around. You cannot go this way. So I couldn't reach Asheville on 40. I had to go through Virginia.
81?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I had to take 40 to 74 to 77 to 81. And then 81 to 40, because I was going to the Louis Bluey Festival. So I drove all around and made contact with all the points where I should have been able to get back to Asheville.
Right.
But the roads were blocked off. I didn't know what was going on. And then I heard that the interstates were washed away.
Yeah.
And so for a moment, I thought, okay, like, when will I see my husband again? That, in my head, but I didn't want to panic about it. So I just, I got in touch with other people that were around, and I found out like he was okay. They didn't have any damage on the property. It was just no internet and no power and no water.
Yes.
And so for about 2.5 weeks, I could not reach Asheville. So I just traveled all around, staying with friends for about 2.5 weeks. I was in Tennessee and Kentucky and Virginia. And so I didn't see him for that amount of time until the roads were made clear in ways that would allow me to reach home. And I ended up going from Virginia to Charlotte and then coming back around to Asheville.
Wow.
So it definitely was intense time, and all the things were swirling around in my head. Like, will I get back home? How's my husband doing?
Right.
Is it safe there?
Right.
They didn't have water, and that was like the number one thing, but he had bought a lot of water before the storm, and he had filled up the bathtub with water so he could use the bathroom.
Smart.
So that was good. So he was very comfortable. People outside from other places were panicking for him and me. And I said, don't put that on me. Right. I know he's okay. Yes. I'm not gonna panic. And people were like, why are you so calm? Because I know he's fine. He's fine. And when I did get in touch with him, I said, well, how's it going, babe? Like, what's going on? He's like, oh, I'm just writing lesson plans and practicing until we go back to school. And that's all he would say. That was as much. We didn't spend a lot of time like worrying about about things we didn't know about or couldn't do anything about. But eventually the roads were cleared and I was able to get home. Now, I will say that as soon as people could do things, people were reclaiming their lives. You have a disaster. Definitely, this was a disaster for the region, and people immediately started trying to reclaim their lives, trying to figure out where they could help, donate. People are still having concerts. I went to a benefit concert and gave a donation last night. So even inside the region, people are still working on recovery efforts, helping people rebuild, helping people get help. I have a friend, she was looking for a car. I'm still looking for a car for her. Like we are still dealing with the storm and living with it. There are parts of town here
Yes.
that are that look like disaster zones, while other parts have reclaimed normal life. We live in an area that really was mostly affected by trees down, and not, we didn't have any houses flooded
Good.
flooded or washed away in our neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
But you only need to go 10 minutes from the house to
Right.
see that something came through here. It looks like Abe Yo-Yo, a monster came through and chewed up certain parts of town.
Yeah.
It looks like that. And so people are still trying to figure out how to help and support and also reclaim normal life. I mean, my husband teaches at Warren Wilson and University of North Carolina, and as soon as they opened school back up.
Yes.
He's still dealing with his students, waiting for them to turn in their final grades, because life is continuing. And that's what's happening here. People are recovering and continuing as much as they can on a daily basis.
As you were sharing that, and you talked about how neither you nor Will were spending time in the unknown spaces and worrying about things, I just began to think about the storytellers that I have known in my life, both those overseas and those here. And there's something, I think, that's potentially innate in somebody who is a storyteller, that as you work on sharing stories, yes, you are working on the verbiage and the line of the story and the cadence of the different points that you want to share. But for the storyteller person, it seems that the personality is one of being able to be in the moment. Perhaps that's because of having read so many stories and looked at different things. But it seems like storytellers are not very prone to to feel comfortable in let's just sit and talk about all the unknowns and let's upset each other talking about the unknowns, right? Let's talk about what is, and okay, everybody's fine. Great. What's the next thing going to be? And I just found myself just settling as you were sharing that part of the story, because my husband's part of the team that's working and helping. Here in East Tennessee, there are 3,500 unhoused people as a direct result of the storm. And we are now months afterwards. And as he was going for training to be able to help to clean out and those kinds of things, two things really stood out to me. One is that they only allow people to go in for 3 days, and then they have to take a day rest minimally. And they can sign up for another 3 days, but they only get to work for 3 days at a time, just to prevent accidents. And then the second part that I found to be so interesting is that there's this rule of 10 that he's able to explain really easily. But the end of that is it's going to take about 6 years for everybody to be back into a house, to everybody to have their car again, to have all of the roads fixed, to have all of those things. They're looking at probably up to 6 years. And that was something that just really, really just felt different. We lived through the Grand Prix fire in Southern California. In our neighborhood of 240 houses or so, 16 were burned completely to the ground. So hot that toilets melted. I mean, it was just such an incredible experience to live through that. Had the order to boil our water once the water was available again. And that was, I think, about 2 weeks worth of that, carrying in the water and being just really careful. This smell, oh my gracious. Months later, when the rains began, all of the smell came right back again, because everything was getting wet. The ashes were, and it's brought that smell right back again. But it wasn't a 6-year rebuild kind of a thing. There were certainly lots that people chose to not rebuild. They chose to sell, and then other people chose to take a while before they chose to build on that lot or do something with the space. But it wasn't a 6-year process. And I'm just so taken And I think part of it is the mountains, these ancient, beautiful mountains that we love, being right here at the Great Smoky National space. It's the roads are not straight.
The roads are not straight and the roads are not flat. And so getting things to certain people is difficult. And just getting the trucks. I mean, just the trucks that are carrying supplies, they were having a really tough time coming through and bringing just groceries.
Basics. Yes.
Yeah, and the water. The water was very significant. We were on a boil notice for 53 days.
Wow.
Well, not boil, no water, and then a boil notice. The whole experience, 53 days before we were allowed to drink the water, which I don't know if people are even now.
Still right.
I think, we still use the box water that we received as donations. So
yes.
Yeah, I feel like it's gonna be a while because people, like you said, it's changed. The water changed, the landscape changed, it changed its routes, which is going to affect the routes that people take.
Yes. It's also impacting the rebuilding of the railroad. There's a section here, not too far away, that they were busily rebuilding it. And then the Army Corps of Engineers came in and said, we need to have a conversation before you do much more with this, because we need to look at how the river has changed and make sure that what you are doing is safe. And I really do appreciate that people are working together. There's been a great amount of loss that has taken place, and people's hearts are open. And like you said, last night you went to a concert benefiting, a place to be able to donate, to be able to say, hey, we see you, we appreciate you, and we are supporting what's taking place.
Yeah, even the people here, I'm like, wow, everybody's affected. Like, people always ask me when they find out I'm from Asheville, were you affected by the storm? Everybody's affected.
Yes.
I mean, so you might as well just say that everybody's been affected. Now, did our house flood? No. Did we have a tree fall on it? No. But like everybody is affected. I can't even. I just had a moment just thinking about the places in town that were affected. Stores and businesses that you were used to visiting that are no longer there. And when you drive the roads, even though they're clear, on the sides of you is destruction. Trucks, ripped up truck beds, and businesses that have been washed through. They're all around us, even though life is moving forward. You're living with it. So we're living with those images every day. Yeah. But that's great that your husband is able to add to the recovery.
Yes.
That's interesting. I could see why they limit like how much time, because the images, the things that you see around you, you wonder about what happened and the story behind them. And when you're looking at it, you think about the people lost. I mean, I think about that. Think about the people who are no longer here.
Right.
You think about the loss of the people who are still here. And it's hard to manage all that, all the questions and all the things. And you ask about the stories that storytellers tell, or how storytellers look at life. I don't know if it's a storyteller thing or a communications thing, but I am more aware and more conscious of the stories I allow around me.
Yes.
And the stories that I want around me, and how I want the stories. So being a storyteller, I'm aware of the power of the story and which stories I want to be told
Yes.
to me, and stories that I want to affect me. So
Mhm.
it's important. Like, all we live by are the stories that we allow around us. So you can allow certain stories to affect you, and you can allow certain other stories to not affect you.
Mm.
And know that they're all stories. They're all stories.
Yes.
And part of it is reality, and part of it is imaginary. They're
Yes.
all stories. They're everything we read, whether it's a news story,
Mm.
whether it's a fairy tale,
Yes.
whether it's even research study
Mhm.
is a story,
It
because
is.
it's not the complete
Right.
story. It's just a wedge, a slice
Mhm.
of what we think we know. So you can be, as a storyteller, um, you become very conscious of the stories you tell and the stories you take.
Mhm. That is so profound for me today, Kelly, that space of the choice that we get to make about the stories that we take in and embrace. And then the stories that we say, thank you, but I'm going to pass on that one. Um, there's this idea of we make a belief, we have a choice, we choose to believe something. Um, and then we look for anything that's going to confirm that bias. So my bias might be that I like the feel of a jean jacket. And no matter what, I'm going to look for all the stories that are going to confirm the bias that jean jackets feel good. Even if I put an itchy one on, I'm going to be looking for a way to put a shirt or something underneath it so that it will, confirm the bias that I have. In that space of getting to choose the stories that we allow to touch our hearts. And some of those stories, I think, have a very quiet way of beautifully, sincerely impacting who we are in the space that we move forward in. And sometimes that can happen as sitting in an audience, and sometimes that happens listening to a podcast or watching a television show. But those spaces of being open to the possibility of a story touching your heart in such a positive way that it moves you forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just so profound for me in this moment. Thank you. Mm.
Yeah.
Are there things that you would like to reiterate for our audience, tools that you encourage them to use, things that you do that helps you as a storyteller continue to craft the work that you are doing?
One habit that I live by is being curious. I'm just a curious person. People say, "Oh, you're so talented. How did you know how to do this? Or why are you interested in that?" I'm just a curious person. At 10 years, I remember being 10 years old, and I found a Italian language textbook at the thrift store. And I said, "Oh, I'm going to teach myself Italian." Why? Why? I don't know, but why did I feel
Why
like
not?
that? It was just like, yeah, why not? And it was just an opportunity. It was like I came across this information, and I thought, well, maybe I could use it and I could challenge myself. I'm going to take that information. So I've just always been like that. I always, everything that I do now, I've always done it in different ways. And I just believe in being curious. I believe that I deserve to know. Like whatever information it is, I deserve to know. I remember being in college, and my one of my professors was giving a lecture on time. We were talking about time and rhythm, and he said something about pseudo-Dionysus
Mm.
and theories of time. And he said, "Oh, we were talking about whether time was cyclical." And he
Mhm.
said, "Oh, you don't need to know about that." I said, "If you're talking about it, I need to know about it."
Yes,
Like,
tell me
you're not
more.
going to talk about something and then tell me, "Oh, like, oh, you don't need to know about that. Oh, yes, I do.
Yes.
And so you're talking about it. I need to know about it. So
Mhm.
I've always had this attitude of that I deserve to know.
Mhm.
Again, that comes from my childhood of growing up with books. My dad always told me, whatever book you have to read, whatever you're reading, whatever textbook you're reading in class, read 2, 3 more,
Mm.
2, 3 others.
Yes.
So I just grew up like that. I was raised like that. My parents, and I think that whatever it is in life, I know how to fix a toilet. I know how to fix a toilet handle. I
Yes.
know how to um I know how to grow plants. I garden. I know what plants you can use to make soap. I just want to
Mhm.
know all the things.
Yes. Yes. So I am curious. I don't need to know, but I am curious. You and Will got married in Japan. Why Japan? And what was that? What was the ceremony like?
Will was in graduate school at University of Tennessee
Uh-huh.
and in Knoxville. And Knoxville has a sister city relationship with Mururoan, Japan, in Hokkaido, which is the northern part of Japan. When you look at Japan, it looks like a lowercase j.
Yes.
Hokkaido is the dot on top. It's the island on top.
Okay.
So it looks a lot like East Tennessee. It's mountainous. It's very green.
Hmm.
It gets very cold there in the winter. Like now it's very cold. They get lots of snow. They have ice festivals. Well,
Oh,
that's our sister city in Knoxville, sister city. And when Will was in graduate school, every year jazz students from the graduate program would go to Mururoan to play their annual jazz festival. And so one year he was selected to go, and this is before 2006. He was selected to go. And it just so happened we had just had a conversation about going to where, like, our dream place to go. And we
right.
both said Japan. And then about 3 months later, he got a call to go to Japan. And
Incredible.
so he was selected along with some other musicians because they send a trio,
Mhm.
but the other 2 people did not want to go. So it just left Will. And I said, you're going to go because you had to pay your way. I said, you're going to go and I'm going to go. And
Yes.
so we went, and Will came up with the idea for us to perform music box style, where he plays his saxophone, plays arpeggios, and I sing on top of the arpeggios like a music box. And
Yes.
so we played together at the festival, and then we also got to play with some of the junior high students that were there
Mm.
and kind of mentor them. And it was a wonderful experience. We were hosted by the Knoxville Club, which is the sister city club in Mururoan. Our club in Knoxville is called the Mururoan Club, but they're the Knoxville Club. And they're made up of community volunteers, politicians, the mayor, business owners, and various people in the city. And they hosted us. And while we were there, they took us around. We did touristy things
So fun.
and ate good food. We had a great time, and they loved on us and we loved on them. And then in 2008, they couldn't find anybody from Knoxville who wanted to go. They had a hard time finding people who wanted to go to Japan. Why? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. But so then the Knoxville Club emailed me, one of the representatives emailed me and asked, hey, can you and Will come back? I said, well, not this year. We're planning our wedding. We're getting married this year. Can't pay for a trip to Japan and a wedding. And so then the representative, who's like an auntie to us, our auntie, she said, get married over here and we'll make all the arrangements.
Wow.
So then I asked Will, I said, do you want to do that? Because that means that none of our family can come,
Right. Right.
And then he said, oh, I'd be a fool not to get married in Japan. And so then I just wanted to make sure. I said, so you're saying that you'll make all the arrangements, meaning that when we get there, we're not going to have a big fat Japanese bill. She said, oh, no, we're going to take care of everything. And so they did. So we flew over there to play the jazz festival in August, and we got married at the foot of the Swan Bridge in the visitor center on August 21st. And my mom also traveled there with us. So my mom was there. and it was her first time out the country. And so we got married in our traditional wedding kimonos at the foot of the Swan Bridge with about 20, 25 little kindergartners as our flower children at the wedding. They carried in flowers, bouquets of flowers, and American flags and U.S. flags, U.S. flags and Japanese flags. And they carried in the flags and the flowers, and we were married by a minister from New Zealand who spoke English, but ended up doing the ceremony in Japanese because they broadcast the wedding over the radio. And so they wanted it to be in Japanese. The mayor was the officiant. And all of our friends were there. And that was amazing enough. And then when the person who chaperoned us back to the hotel dropped us off, he said, be ready 7:00 for a reception. And I thought, what, a reception? So we had a reception at the hotel. It was about 200 people there. They brought gifts. We had food. I mean, the tables were covered in food, all the food and drink you want. And we just, I just think about it. It's like a dream. And then we had so many gifts that we had to buy luggage from the thrift store to bring back all the things that we had gotten as wedding gifts that are still in a suitcase in my storage right now because they're so precious to us. We just hold them. But so many gifts that we got from the wedding, and then we came back and had a reception here in the States. But that's how we got to Japan, to Mururoan, why we ended up getting married there. And now it's like our second home, and those people are like our other family. And we still travel there. Before the shutdown with COVID, we were going like every other year back to Japan. So we haven't been in a couple of years, and we really miss it, and we're homesick. And every week I'm looking at flights like, when can we go? When is the best time to go back? I love it so much. We've been to Mururoan and Sapporo and Hokkaido, Tokyo, Kyoto. I think we've been to Osaka and even Okinawa. So we travel to all the different areas, and we have friends in all those places. We play at different jazz clubs because there's jazz all over Japan, and we always find other musicians to play with and learn from. So we enjoy it. And one of the young junior high students, well, middle school students, or junior high, middle school is the same. One of the students that we met when we first went over there, she now lives here, and she's a little jazz celebrity. I say little because to me, she's like a little niece. We look at her as a niece, okay? But she's grown now. She's like in her 20s. She might be, I'm not going to do the math, but she's in her 20s. And she's playing with people like Christian McBride and Herbie Hancock and all these people. She's big time. Arena Terakubo. She's a wonderful, exciting, innovative, powerhouse saxophone player. When you look at her, you say, oh, this little thing, she's so cute. But when she picks up that saxophone, she'll send all the other saxophone players back to school. She's a powerhouse. But they also have a respect for jazz music, and jazz music that you don't really see on that much here in the U.S. And they learn jazz from an early age, and they play in big bands as children, and they grow up studying. Even if they can't speak English, they know Louis Armstrong, they know Ella Fitzgerald, they know Duke Ellington, and they study it. So so it's amazing to watch her and to know that we met in Japan when she was just a child, and now she's a beautiful professional musician here in the U.S. So a lot of things came out of those trips to Japan, and we are connected to it and love it so much.
Wow. Kelly, thank you
And we
so.
recorded an album. That's what I forgot to say.
Oh, and an album.
Right. So we recorded an album because that was the only thing. I almost forgot about the music. So we recorded an album called Dreams of Marura, and that was a gift to the people who gave us the wedding, because it was the thing that we could carry and travel with, and also give as a gift. Because when you're in Japan, if someone gives,
That's right.
you give back, you reciprocate. And so we recorded that Dreams of Mururan as a gift to the people. The music was the gift.
And it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Kelly, thank you so much for carving time out for this conversation. And if you ever want to come back, know that we'd be delighted to have another conversation with you. And for all the storytellers that you are opening the doors for, we just say thank you so much for the work that you are doing, for the clear-headedness that you have of taking what you've done with the ukuleles and with Jazz for Women and moving it into this space for storytelling as well. And you are completely deserving for all of the awards and fellowships and things that you are getting, because you are helping us to remember and helping us to create also. And so thank you so, so much for who you are and the work that you are doing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here and listening to my story.
Absolutely. And so to the audience, we say thank you again for being here. We treasure that you invest in yourself by listening to these stories and hearing how these things can impact your life, and that you can be changing lives also through the work that you do. Until next time.